Yesterday, Sayadaw spoke about tangible objects, which are among the 6 objects to be observed by the yogis. The body and substance, 2 parts are physical. So the body base, kaya pasada, is the receptor element for touch. And this capability to receive touch is spread throughout the whole body, throughout all the areas which are moist, which have blood or flesh. And when there are tangible elements such as hardness, softness, hot, cold, warmth, lightness, stiffness, tension. All these are forms of tangible matter. And so in Pali, tangible matter is called pottabha rupa. It literally means tangible matter. These make up the striker element. So when the tangible object comes and strikes anywhere on the receptor element, the qualities of that matter appear. When something coarse strikes the receptor element, the body base, then one knows the coarseness. When something gentle strikes the body base, then one knows the gentle touch. When there's hardness, one knows hardness. When there's softness or tenderness, something soft and tender touching the body base, then one knows that soft, tender touch. When there's heat or cold, one knows these qualities, heat or cold. When there's stiffness or tension, one knows that strikes the body base, then one knows stiffness or tension. And this knowing is part of the spark element that occurs. And when the mind and the object come together on the body base, kaya pasada, there's contact. This is called touching contact. This is a mental Dhamma which is evident at the time of touching. And if the object is something that is good to touch, then there will be a pleasant feeling. If the object is something that is bad to touch, there will be an unpleasant feeling. The sensation of touch is not neutral. It's either pleasant or unpleasant, but in terms of the suttas, it is described as also being neutral. It can be experienced as being neutral. So these 3 qualities, touching, contact, feeling, touch consciousness, contact, feeling, these 3 are mind. While touching, what is known is the truth of suffering. What we can know when touch happens is the truth of suffering. And the truth of suffering, that dukkha satya, is to be known. Therefore, what do? We note, touching. We note it and know it like this. There are many, many ways in which touch can be experienced. The rising, falling, sitting, touching, leaning, bending, lifting the head, lifting, moving, placing, blinking the eyes, opening and closing the eyes. These are all, when we experience these are all forms of touch, experiencing a tangible object. And when there's the matter involved in physicality, in lifting, then we know the lifting. There's matter involved in moving, in placing, in standing and turning. So all these moments are times when we can experience touch. It's a very, very broad category. It is the most obvious type of sense experience. And it is also it is the most numerous there are many, many ways in which we can experience it. And the Vipassana instruction is yatha pakatan Vipassana viniveso, that one has to begin Vipassana practice according to the obvious object. So accordingly we observe touch. And today Sayadaw will begin by continuing to speak about the rising and the falling. In sitting, we observe starting with the rising and the falling. This is what the yogis need to observe. And one puts the attention on the abdomen. When the rising appears, then in order to get the mind to stick to the object, we apply effort. And we aim. So the mind reaches the object, one has to apply ardent effort. And so that the mind meets the object exactly, so that it's focused properly on the object, we need aiming, which is a jhana quality. So effort is among the most important factors of the Eightfold Path. So one can't observe the objects in a cool or sluggish or slow manner. One has to apply ardent effort. The mind has to be alert, ready to observe, ready to get the mind so that it will stick to the object. But if the effort is excessive, then one will miss the object. If the effort is too much, and if the effort is not enough, it won't reach the object. So the right amount of effort must be present every time. And aiming, together with aiming, these two must be present. So when the rising appears, does the mind get there? And does it meet up with the object exactly? Same with the falling. Does the mind stick to the object? Does the mind get there and stick with the object? And is the mind meeting the falling head on? So one has to know this. One has to be able to see whether one is actually doing this or not. So the question is, we have to know is, do we apply effort and aim? So every time the abdomen rises, every time the abdomen falls, are these factors of applying effort and aiming present? It's very important to apply them. One can't be slack, and one also can't be just as though one is reciting a list, a shopping list or something like that. The mind actually has to be together with the object. So one's experience has to be practical, not just something one thinks about. And if one does get the mind to the object, one will know. If one misses the object, also one will know. One knows for oneself what one is doing. And if one's mind reaches the object, then what does one see? Does one see the form of the abdomen, the shape of it? Or does one see the way the abdomen is expanded or collapsed? This is called the manner or position. Or does one see a quality? What quality does one see? When we put a bit of food in our mouth and chew it, so do we chew the morsel? And if we chew the morsel of food, then we are sure to know what flavor is there. We'll know the flavor. So it's just like it's just like this. One has to just like one has to chew the morsel of food, one will know what flavor comes out. And if one notes, if one observes one's chewing attentively, then one will know the flavor that is there. And if one doesn't pay any attention while one is chewing, then one won't know at all. And Sayadaw gives this example many times to try to illustrate how we have to practice. And perhaps some yogis think that this example is very childish or very insignificant, because they don't seem to pay attention to what this example is showing, because they are not able to speak about the rising and the falling. If they speak about it, they just give one experience of the rising, one experience of the falling. But during our sitting, the rising and the falling occur many, many times. And it's important to say whether you can observe it one after another continuously. And if you can observe more than one at a time, if you can observe them in some type of continuity, then during that time that you're able to observe one rising, one falling after another, how does it change from time to time? One should be able to say this. It's like when we're looking at the rising and the falling and sitting is like looking at a line of ants from a distance. If we look from far away, we may think it's a rope lying on the ground, or we may think it's a stick. And if we go a bit closer, we'll see that it's moving. And to the extent that we go closer, we'll know, oh, it's not a rope. We know that it's a rope. We know that it's no longer not a rope when we go closer. We don't necessarily know what it is, but we know it is not a rope. We know it's not a stick. And when we go forward further, we see maybe 2 or 3 ants together, just a clump of ants. And when we go as near as we can, then we see that there's individual ants that are each moving in a different way. So the difference in how one sees is because of the difference in our distance from the object. So one has to understand this, that our vision changes as we get closer or farther to the object. So if we note an object for 1 minute, is the knowing during that time the same each time we observe the object during that minute? If we are noting a certain object for 5 minutes, then during that 5 minutes, is the knowing from one noting to the next, is the knowing the same during that 5 minutes? So it's not enough just to say one experience of the rising and one experience of the falling, because one should also continue to say how one continued to observe after that one rising, that one falling. And if one isn't able to say, then it shows the yogi is not practicing carefully. They're practicing carelessly and not with meticulous care. Everyone knows that a clean mind is good. Everyone understands it is good. When the mind is clean and free of lobha, when it is free of anger, frustration, or dosa, when it is free of ignorance or moha, this is clean. These qualities of lobha, dosa, and moha, greed, hatred, and delusion, make the mind cloudy. And meditation practice is for creating this clean mind from nothing, upada, That means bringing it into existence. And it is also about Vutana, to develop this clean mind once it has been created. So creating and developing the mind which is free of lobha, dosa and moha, greed, hatred and delusion. This is bhavana, or mental development. So the work of bhavana is to create this clean mind and develop it. And one has to understand that this work is valuable, and because it's valuable, one needs to really give it a lot. One can't be treated lightly. So the yogi who knows the correct method and then applies it with respect, with meticulous care, with continuity, not behaving like a child, but behaving like an adult. When they start out, when they're sitting, the rising appears, they try to observe it. The falling appears, they try to observe it. They make effort, but it doesn't happen the way they intend to have it happen or the way that they think it's going to happen. They try, but the mind wanders, and they don't know until later. And so what they're able to note is just a few things. They're not able to note very much at the start. And what they are not able to note is most of the things. That's the way it goes. But the yogi who is honest, has the quality of being honest, when they meet the meditation teacher, they describe quite frankly, the instructions say to observe the rising, to observe the falling. I can't note it. I try. I note it once, the mind wanders. I don't know the mind wanders. When I realize the mind wandered, then I come back and note the rising and the falling. And so this is the way the yogi who values the work of the practice starts out by kind of complaining in this way, that they're not able to do it. And when yogis start out and they don't talk in this kind of complaining or whining way about how they can't note the objects, it shows that the yogi is not being careful, because they don't know what is happening. And when the yogis don't say what they actually experience in this type of frank way, the meditation teachers are not able to fix them. They're not able to help them. And this is what happens. It happens at present. So, in order that the teachers can give precise help, it's important to show how you work, to say whether you can apply the instructions or not. Do you apply the instructions? That's one thing. Are you able to apply them? And then you have to be very frank about how you try and what you experience. When you look at something from a place at which you want to view it from, you see that thing. You're standing from a place where you want to see this object. And from that place, if you go a little bit closer, what you see is not the same as when you were standing a bit farther. If you want to see very clearly what the object is, then you have to go forward more. So each time you take a step forward towards the thing that you are looking at, what you see becomes more clear. With every step, it becomes clearer and clearer. When we observe the rising and falling from a distance, then we know one rising, one falling, one or two. And if we go closer, then we'll find there are many things that become clear just in moving closer. So it's not enough to stay at a distance. One has to use effort and aiming. And these qualities, we shouldn't reduce them. We shouldn't let up on applying effort to get the mind to the object and aiming so the mind will be in focus. We have to keep on increasing our effort and increasing our ability to focus. And to that extent, our vision, what we see, the view of what the thing that we're looking at, will become clearer and clearer. It's like looking at something that can't be seen with the naked eye, using the help of a magnifying glass or a microscope. We use these types of instruments to aid the vision, to correct our vision. So we can't just stay far away. We have and look in a casual way. We have to build up our mental energy and our aiming. And if we don't build these qualities up, then there won't be any change in what we observe from day to day. The only thing that will happen is the time will be gone. At the start of the practice, if a yogi works in an honest way, then when the abdomen rises, the first thing that the yogi starts to notice is that the mind sticks to the abdomen. When the falling occurs, the yogi notices that the mind sticks to the abdomen. And so the mind is sticking to the form at this point. So the yogi is able to see this, the form. And when the yogi continues to observe, then they come to know how the abdomen expands or how it collapses during the falling. And this is knowing the manner of the rising and the falling. This is called akara. And one says what it is one sees honestly. So when one reports, one just says what one has seen. And the teacher knows when the yogi is saying something just out of imagination. There are three levels on which we see. One level is the form. In the rising and the falling, the form that we see is the place where the rising and falling occurs, which is the abdomen. So we see the form or the shape of the abdomen. And sometimes what we observe is how the abdomen, how there's expansion and collapsing. So this is the manner of the rising and the falling, called akara. One can also see stiffness or tension or movement, these types of qualities. These are called sabhava, or true nature. So if we apply aim and effort, then the mind sticks to the object. So what is it that we know? So one should be able to say, the mind didn't get to the object. The mind didn't get to the rising or to the falling. The yogi can say whether they're able to know it or not. And things like the form and the manner, these are not really there. What is really there is stiffness, tension, movement, these types of qualities. But at the start, it is not possible for us to see these. So what we have to do is we have to try to work to develop the ability to be able to see the true nature. And we do this by, first of all, purifying our sila, our morality. And then we have to make the mind clean. make the mind clean by applying effort and aiming to observe the object. And as we try to make the mind clean, sometimes we start to see the true nature mixed in with the abdomen, the expansion or the collapsing of the belly. So if one focuses carefully, one will be able to say what it is, what one is seeing. And if one is not able to say, it shows that the yogi is not trying in a careful way. They're not able to work in a meticulous way. In the world, we have to work in order to get food and shelter, the things we need to live. So we have to work in a factory or an office, and if we work the required hours, then we'll get full pay. If we take a rest, if we just try to slack off and not work the required amount, then the owner knows about it. So if we want to get paid, we have to work full time. And when we do that, then we get full salary. So for yogis, it's the same way. Yogis have to work full time without taking breaks. And only if one works continuously will one get paid by realizing knowledge stage by stage. There are some differences. Workers get breaks during the day, but yogis don't. They can't even take 1 second off. Workers, when they work, they get tired. They spend their energy, they spend their physical energy, and they spend their mental energy, and so after work they're tired. But this Dhamma, if we practice it continuously, we will get mental and physical energy. So this energy will get better and better the more we work. So if we're not able to work full-time, give full-time effort in the practice, then we won't get paid. We won't get knowledge. But if we work full-time, then we'll become happy and very enthusiastic about the practice. So this is the difference between working at the practice and working at a job. So if you don't have anything to be enthusiastic about in this past month, then it shows that the yogi is not working full-time at the practice. So for the remaining time, so that one will get benefit, the benefit of having come here, so that one will become happy and enthusiastic and return home in this happy, enthusiastic state, having gained benefit from having come here. Sayadaw urges you to practice respectfully, carefully, and continuously. This is all for today, as the hour is up.